Hello, guys, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Crooked Illness. Today will be an important conversation covering the topics of body image and eating disorders with my guest, Alison Haase. Alison is an author, blogger, athlete, and an eating disorder survivor. Alison wrote The Addict in Aisle 7, where she gets into the drug addiction she experienced along with alcoholism as a teen, her journey to sobriety, and the one thing most stigmatized of all, eating disorders. She also runs her blog, iseektruths.com, where she shares her story, experiences, and daily thoughts with others. So without further ado, welcome Alison to the podcast.
Hello, Paris. Thank
Hello,
you.
hello. Yes, thank you for being here today. Excited to get into this one.
Me too.
All
Me
right,
too.
so let's just jump right into it. So tell me what your experience has been like and is like now related to body image.
That's a heavy question, right? And the reason it's heavy is because I find there's a different answer every day because it directly relates to where I'm at emotionally, spiritually, physically, because body image is personal. And it is something that evolves over time. We have perceptions of ourselves and others and what we're supposed to think we look like. And, it changes with time. Again, hindsight's 2020. I remember photos were taken. I can tell you exactly how I felt in the moment the photo was taken. And then I look back on that and I think, holy shit, I don't look anything the way that my brain told me I looked like on that day, right?
Yeah.
And nor did I care about the experience we were having that the photo captures. I only cared about what I thought I saw. And so, body image today is something that I have to be really dutiful about taking care of myself physically so that it doesn't suffocate me, choke me, and paralyze me from living my life, right?
Mhm.
So it's a physical washing of my brain and changing of behavior so that I don't go back to the default, which is I can't leave my house if I don't look a certain way. I'm not worthy of leaving the house if I don't look a certain way. I can't go somewhere because I'm not ready. I can't go on vacation and wear a bathing suit because I haven't lost X, Y, or Z in preparation. I can't celebrate family, whatever, right? Like that's the old default thinking, which is I'm not good enough if I don't look a certain way. And that's what body image is to me. And so today it's a matter of I can go because I was invited. And what can I bring that is in addition to my physical presence, right? What kind of energy can I bring? What kind of emotional uplift can I support whomever I'm doing, right? This is their birthday, not mine. It's about them, right? What can I bring that's not about food or body? So
Yeah. Yeah, I love how
obviously
you
we could go in a lot of directions there.
Yeah, I love how you related that from the way that you used to look at it to kind of associating it more in today's terms with what else can you bring to the table besides the body image part? Like you mentioned, the energy, the presence, what's going on in that moment, and focusing more on that. And I would love to hear about that transition of how you used to view body image before, when you were really struggling in that moment, and what kinds of things did you do? How did you go from that place to how you are now?
Great question. And my initial answer is it's still happening, right? I'm still evolving. I'm still working through because the things that are non-negotiable in life are having a body and eating food, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
have a disordered, if you will, relationship with either, tough shit, right? Like we've got to figure out how to live anyway and thrive anyway. And it's
Mm-hmm.
totally possible. And I'm not saying I hate the idea that I once was and now I am. Like, I think it's a continuous journey, especially with body and food. And, I've had to seek a lot of outside help. I've had to go to 12-step recovery where I still go. I have to have a nutritionist. I have to have a personal trainer as accountability partners and people that support me. I have to have friends in my life that communicate in the same way that I do so that because I'm plagued by shame. I'm plagued by this isolation that I'm the only one. I can't talk about it. I can't shed light on it. If I do, no one's going to get it. I'm going to be all alone. So I have to have people in my life that help me smash that idea and help me keep trudging, because some days I don't have it, right? I don't have my own light to share for myself. And so I need to borrow someone else's. And just the other day, I remember somebody took a beautiful photo of themselves, rightfully so. They're freaking ripped. And I'm in the past, I would have just shit on myself because if she's ripped, that means I can't be. Instead of like, she looks awesome and maybe I do too, and we look different, right? And so the other day, I see this woman, and immediately I'm just like, I'm not attracted to women in that way, but if I were, like, hey, right? Like beautiful traps. I'm personally attracted to muscles. She just looked amazing. And then I did notice I didn't feel as good in the gym mirror as I did the day before. And today I can recognize that as maybe not a truth, not something to attach to, not something to change my behavior around, right? I don't have to change my food or my training and start doing something I don't enjoy. And just kind of be with that feeling, right? I also presented a huge podcast to Cigna nationwide. So like I was vulnerable and had emotional leftover feelings from that. And today I can recognize that, because for me, when I'm vulnerable, that transfers to fat in the mirror. I don't know why, but it does. So if I'm getting ready for a date, if I'm getting ready for a big work proposal, if I'm nervous, it shows up in the mirror and it's not as sexy, right? But if I'm like elated and excited and feeling vibrant, I lost weight, right? Meanwhile, nothing's
Yeah.
actually changed. So today I have the resources to know what's true and what's not. It doesn't always feel good, but I at least know, like, okay, this will pass because nothing changed from yesterday when I felt good. I also had to go to body image group therapy, right? That was really helpful in helping unlayer what I just talked about, right? Like what's
Yeah.
unpack truth and why, and
Yeah.
start to implement behaviors that are helpful into living better. So like not changing 1,000 times unless like I literally don't match and would embarrass myself. Otherwise, get your ass out the door, because I start changing my clothes and I start to get paralyzed and unable to leave the house. If it's hot out, you're allowed to wear shorts, and no one cares about your cellulite that I've had my entire life as much as I do, right?
Yeah.
Because most of us have it, right? And so the more I practice wearing shorts and just being comfortable, the more I can be comfortable wearing shorts. But when I hide and I only wear pants, it's really hard to wear something different. Same thing with a
Yeah.
bathing suit, right? There's so many different styles of bathing suits now, but like if I don't just practice going to the beach or the pool or whatever because it's hot out and someone invited me, then I won't be able to do those things. And so again, learning how to just do it anyway, and then you just get more comfortable. And then I guess too, like age is on my side, right? I'm 35. I don't care as much as I used to just because I don't. And it's kind of like, well, if it's not gone yet, probably not leaving, right?
Yeah.
So like here we are. Let's
That
move on.
I love that. I agree with, yeah, 100%. Because I feel like I like how you mentioned the part of, when you're not comfortable but doing it anyway, stepping out of that comfort zone and doing it anyway. And also the part that you mentioned about the stigma attached with body image and with feeling that shame and
Yeah.
internally, and kind of that brings it back to the point that when I talked to you before, we had that awesome phone call where we were talking and you mentioned to me that like eating disorders isn't, and just from my experience, it's not something that I've seen talked about as much as other things, right? So there's other things related to, mental health, mental illness, addiction, recovery, different topics like that I see more conversations being had in, online, on social media, different things like that. But I don't see as much about this kind of a topic. And I feel like it's like, this is why I wanted you to come on and really talk about this. Cause I feel like it's so, it hits everybody in some kind of a sense, cause
Yeah.
everyone has days, right? We don't feel 100% like gorgeous, amazing, perfect
Right.
human beings. And we
Right.
have days where we struggle, we're not happy, we don't like what we see. And having that shame associated with the way we look, carrying that, struggle with that, and also kind of having that, going through that hard time with our image of our own bodies. And, that's why I really wanted to kind of hear more about, you know, the experience that you had. Cause I know in your book, The Addict and IL-7, if you could pinpoint the biggest lesson that
Mm,
you've learned about publishing your personal story and experience with your eating disorder, what would that be?
gosh. I mean, the first thing is you're not alone, right? Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not alone. Whomever's reading is not alone. Um, I really, and it's not the end, right? Like we're not alone and we can get help and you can thrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I shied away from eating disorder recovery because I thought that I would be confined to this box. The box could be, I'd have to accept being fat, right? I couldn't train the way that I love to train because exercise can certainly be used as a tool to reduce size, change the way I look, which I still do. And we can talk about that too. And I think it's okay. But you know, like some women or men have to let go of exercise initially to heal, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
only use it as a way to punish, remove food, whatever, right? To numb
Mm-hmm.
out. And so, like, I really thought recovery, so the takeaway is you're not alone, but also recovery is nothing like your brain tells you it is, right? Your brain
Mm-hmm.
wants you to stay with it right now, right? What I refer to as my disease. My disease is my lower power, that default thinking that I'm not enough, my addiction, right? So it's just easier for me to refer to it as something tangible that's not me so that I can
Mm-hmm.
give myself some grace and be like, okay, Allison wants right for herself, but my disease wants to fucking kill me, right?
Yeah.
Which is my truth and true for me. And so, like, recovery looks nothing like what my disease says it would
Mm,
at all.
that's yes, yeah. Because I like, and I like how you talked about that, the part of not feeling alone. Because I feel like when, you know, when you're struggling with something and nobody knows about it, you don't talk about it, nobody has an idea, you do feel like you're alone because you are,
Yeah.
in a sense,
Yeah.
because you know you have whatever it is that you're carrying, whether it's associated with shame, guilt, regret, whatever it is that's holding you back from taking that first step, like you've done, to doing these groups, to talking about it, to having these conversations, to hopping on these podcasts and talking about these topics, things like that. The That's a huge thing, because even though you know, we kind of hear this all the time, you know, you're not alone, we, you know, it's always the message, you're not alone, but I think it's so true, and it resonates with so many things, especially something like this, when you're talking about something so personal as someone's body, you know, like
Yeah.
that's a, you know, it's the way you look, the way that you think you look, the way that you perceive yourself, and the way that you're perceiving other people seeing you, and how
Yep.
that's affecting your, you know, day-to-day life, your relationships, your job, whatever that is doing to you. And I think that's a huge thing to pinpoint, you know, the fact that that's the message that you're getting across, is letting people know that. And when you're, and because that's huge, like people need to have that, and really, you know, have that understanding of that. So I mean, I love that. So I mean, if you could, you know, just in your own words, what does it mean to recover from an eating disorder, and what does that look like? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Another great question, Paris. And I told you that, like, you got it, right? Like, you sent me the outline, and I was like, thank God, right? Someone heard what I'm trying to relay in a way that is relatable and simple. And so, to what I like to refer to it as being sober from food, right?
Mm,
And for me, it's learning how to live in the gray and be a friend of myself and my body, right? So my
mhm,
eating disorder and my default would be bulimia. I've had periods of anorexia. I'm certainly a compulsive eater, and I think whatever you are with food, I mean, there you can be anything and you can be nothing all at the same time, right?
mhm,
Um, and for me, it was, you know, really growing up with this idea that food was good or bad. And if I ate said food, I was good or bad, and tying
mm,
my worth back to those foods. And while there is certainly no argument that some foods are better for you than others, they're going to yield a better nourishing result. They are more vibrant with energy. But at the end of the day, there is also a space for joy and comfort with food. And when your messaging has been good, bad, black, white, like that's a really delicate relationship to try and untangle. And
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's imprinted on you as a, prepubescent girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me now at 35, it's very much like having a more neutral relationship while also having a healthy respect for what foods do and don't work for me. And
Mm-hmm.
those foods change, right? Like I still to this day do not eat dessert. I have yet to find a balance with one cookie because I don't want one fucking cookie. I want all the cookies. I want to get back there. I want to eat the raw cookie dough. I want the whole bakery. Like just let me in. I'll give you some lump sum of money and I'll just help myself, right? And like
Yeah.
it's funny, but it's also the truth. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
a different reaction to certain foods. Like once I start eating them, whether it's a physiological response or a psychological response, but I just cannot stop eating them. And then who would feel good about that, right? And that just
Mm-hmm.
kickstarts this whole chain of events where I eat past capacity and then I purge and then I starve and then I just keep going. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
just found that my life is way better without dessert in it. I was sugar free for a long time. Now I find that I really am okay with like honey, jam, and I don't eat it all the time. And I find that I don't want it all the time, but I have it in my life.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm very aware of when I'm overtired, I'm more likely to want to eat more. And so a big part
Mm-hmm.
of my recovery is having a food plan, which helps me live in between meals, right? Some people can't have like a regimented, this is what you need. For me, it's just really helpful because then I can't second guess what I need, if I ate too much, if I ate too little. And it helps me start to recognize, is this an emotion or hunger? Is this
Mm.
thirst? Am I tired? Right? Because after work, I'd always want to eat because I don't drink, right? I've been sober for almost 17 years. So I don't have like your happy hour to then go decompress from work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I've already trained because I prefer the mornings. I have more energy and it fits better in my schedule. So like I don't have a thing to go do after work to like come down. And my
Yeah.
natural tendency is to do something unhealthy, right? So like enter food and enter large quantities of food that have nothing to do with my needs at that point or
Mm-hmm.
hunger. So like having a food plan from a nutritionist designed for me and my energetic requirements and my athletic goals just helps me like cut the bullshit in between. Like I've eaten enough, it's all good. I've yet to starve, right? I've yet
Mm-hmm.
to die, and it just works for me. And in the beginning of my recovery, I had to have way more flexible food plans where like I had generic measurements of food. Now I'm really detailed, right? I follow a very detailed macro-based plan that changes all the time. And for today, that's where I'm at, right? When I wrote my book, I was not in that space and I still wasn't eating things that I eat now. Like I can eat pizza now. I can eat fries now. I can eat like jelly, right? And when I wrote my book, I was like, no flour, no gluten, no sugar. And that's what I had to do to get started. And then
Mm-hmm.
I slowly had to start learning that I could trust myself and that it
Yeah.
was okay. And eat enough to support me so that I wasn't constantly thinking about
Mm.
food, right? And so
Yeah.
it's evolved a lot. And recovery from food too, like I also have learned that I reserve the right to want to change how I look if I want to and I'm unhappy, but I also have to be in a very safe place to do that and a
Mm-hmm.
supported place. So like I came into recovery thinking I needed to change how I looked. And so I needed a couple years of just accepting where I am right now, even if it's not my best, whatever that looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to respect my body because this is the vehicle that allows me to experience life, right? This is the
Mm.
vehicle that trudges up mountains and carries heavy shits and wins ultra obstacle course races, which I have, right? And like that body has to be fed. And that body doesn't look like the Nike girl sponsored on the front of the magazine. And I have to accept and respect that too. And so,
Mm-hmm.
learning just the boundaries and also knowing like this is my journey. And I think that's why food recovery is so hard. It's very personal. What
Mm-hmm.
I do would not work for the person next to me. I work with other women and help them through their journeys. And everybody's looks really different.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having a healthy respect for like there's no one size fits all,
Mm-hmm.
but like the foundation is the same. I can't do it alone. I've
Mm-hmm.
got to have a community of support, which is my 12-step recovery, and I've got to have professionals in my life to help hold me accountable. And within that, there's a lot of flexibility, but those are things that are staples that I found I really just need.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you mentioned in the beginning, kind of breaking that association with if you eat this, that's good or bad. And then you're good or
Yeah.
bad as a result of that. Because, like you mentioned, especially when you develop that from such an early age and you're trying to change, to break that cycle, to come out of that pattern of thinking, the way that you're behaving, all of that kind of stuff is very difficult and is not an easy thing to do, is not something that would typically happen over, a week's time. Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and, be like this, the way that I want to be. But I love that you bring that up because it's so true in, something like this, when you're struggling with something like this, changing that pattern and doing that in a way that serves you and actually opens up a life that you enjoy and you love
Yeah.
and you are happy and you do feel like you're in a good place and you've arrived at a place where you like being. And I also like how you mentioned kind of the aspect of recovering from food, because when we talked before, you brought up a really good point that that's something that I've never really looked at it this way, even though when I say it, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, like I know what you're talking about. But the fact that we can't live without food. And if you're struggling with food, your issue that you're dealing with is related or tied to food, that makes it very challenging because there's things in
Yeah.
our lives that we can go without. We can
Yeah.
live without this. We don't need that.
Yeah.
But we're going to die if we don't eat. So
Yeah.
that's going to happen. So, especially with something like this that, not everybody is comfortable talking about this or bringing this up, but that's why I'm so glad to have you here, because you are having this conversation and talking about your experiences and kind of the things that you've done to get to the path that you are on now and to feel good, feel happy, feel joy, and not the way that you were. And
Right.
it's a topic that we we need. And I'm glad that you came to me and we made this happen and we're doing this and talking about this. And another question that I really want to ask you is, why do you think the topic of eating disorders does not seem to be as commonly discussed as other topics like we mentioned before concerning addiction or mental illness?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer that and also add more to my previous answer,
Yeah.
because a big part of my recovery is like there are certain behaviors I cannot engage in, right? Like
Hmm.
that are going to really either derail me today, and they're just kind of like non-negotiable boundaries, right? Just like
Hmm.
you said, food is a non-negotiable part of life. I have to eat. Whereas with drugs and alcohol, I don't drink and I don't do drugs. Like that's a very
Hmm.
clear, defined sobriety path. But like
Hmm.
food sobriety, what the hell does that mean? So, core behaviors are like, I won't binge or purge no matter what. I won't skip breakfast no matter what. I won't train differently no matter what, right? I won't eat differently than I'm supposed to based on how I feel. And like
Hmm.
setting boundaries in motion that, because now leading into your next question, like the world has thrived off of those behaviors, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, just treat yourself, it's Thanksgiving, or oh, just
Hmm.
fast until the next day because you ate too much on Christmas. Oh, just cleanse and juice and diet. And I've done all that shit, right? And I think
Hmm.
it's kind of like I've done that too. And I can say at the end of the day, none of that is helpful to
Hmm.
having a healing relationship with food. Like our world thrives off of gym memberships and waist thinners and trimmers. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, ladies, that doesn't actually work. And I did that too, right? Like I wore a freaking belt for a long time and was like choking myself out every day, so uncomfortable. Um,
Hmm.
um, didn't change my hip size because
Yeah.
I have bones in there that are staying the same, right? But like our world is so warped and molded to conform to the idea that we should change our bodies. And again, like we have the right to do that, but like what's my intention behind wanting to do that, right?
Mm.
Like that's where I go now is why do I want to change the way I will look? Is it genuine? Like I really just want to see some abs and like some round shoulders? Fine. But do I think my life is going to be different and that I'm going to be happier or that my job's going to be richer or I'm going to be a better girlfriend or a sister or a friend or a daughter? The answer is no, because
Mm.
the more I focus on body, the less available I am to those people. So
Mm,
it all goes back to my intention. But I just think because our world is so focused on the outside and not
mm,
addressing causes and conditions of what's underneath, that it's just like, I'm not telling you that I struggle. And when I go at home at night, I feel like a fraud or I can't stop
mm,
eating and puking my brains out. Like
mm,
who wants to admit that, right? Or like the
mm.
reason I look so good is because I'm snorting coke in the bathroom, right? I recently
Yeah.
heard a podcast of like a former, I guess she's still a fitness star, like in the aerobics world.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason she looked so iconic for so long is because she did crystal meth, right? And she
Wow.
starved herself. And it's like, you think the public wants to hear that's the truth? No, like we want
Mm,
the public to think that they're failing over and over again at being human, because
mm,
we can't all look like that. And it's not, we're not supposed to either, right? Like I did steroids when I was bodybuilding because I don't look like that
mm.
naturally, no matter what
Yeah.
I do. And I just think, again, because food is delicate, it's
Mm-hmm.
personal, right? There's a lot of like heritage in food and comfort and joy and entertainment. And then, for somebody like me, I've taken drugs and alcohol out of the equation. Like, what am I supposed to use as a buffer
Mm,
between you and I, right? Like, how am I supposed to date? How am I supposed to go to a family meal? How am I supposed to do holidays when like I can't eat like you? I just
mm-hmm.
can't. I can't turn the faucet off once I've turned it on. And so I
Yeah.
just think it's like, because it's in life, it's just a harder thing to like talk about. And most of the time we want to talk about it while we're eating, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
do most diet conversations happen? During a meal, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, how impractical is this? Like, let's talk about this while we're walking and we've removed the substance at hand. But
Yeah.
that's our default. So I don't know. I just think like it's just hard to be a human without stuff.
Yeah.
And so like our biggest thing is our body,
Mm.
because we can dress it up or dress it down. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but what's your intention behind it?
Yeah, because I feel like that is the biggest thing is the intention behind what you're doing. And I also like how you mentioned the part about the stories is that when someone like the aerobics woman you mentioned who, was doing meth or whatever she was doing in the bathroom and that's how she looked the way she looked and admitting that. And I feel like, for me personally, I like hearing stories like that. I like hearing because I feel like it's something that is more rare, I think, because it's so common, like you said, to see okay, well, you're in shape, you're doing this, you're exercising, you look great, and then there's not really an issue behind the
Right,
scenes. There's nothing really going
right,
on that is concerning, and if there is, we don't want to talk about it. And I feel like
right,
it's so common to have that, to feel that, to not want to, because like you said, who wants to come out and be like, yeah, like I look this way, but if you only knew, I'm throwing up in the bathroom for hours and
right,
restricting food and crying and struggling and then what would people think? Like, oh,
right,
and
right,
sometimes people don't know how to respond to that or how to take
right,
that or what to say or how to process that. So, but I feel like it's important because that is the reality. That's really what's going on, instead of continuing to try to mask that or push through that or do whatever it is that we do to try to somehow keep going, keep doing whatever we're doing. But yeah, I mean, those moments and those stories of whatever you're dealing with, struggling with in that moment, I feel like is is huge because it's you don't know, who may be dealing with that. You never know. You don't know. And I feel like that's why I think this conversation is so important and so powerful, because it's on a topic, body image and eating disorders, along with your story tied to that. And a lot of people can relate to that, understand that and feel that and say, I've struggled with this, or I have experienced this, or I have a friend, a mom, a sister, a brother, somebody, whoever, who's dealt with this or is dealing with this. Maybe someone listening to this is dealing with the things that you mentioned, and it may not be the exact same kind of experience, but there might be similarities there that they
sure.
can take away things that you've said and use that in some kind of a way to help in some kind of a way. So, you
And I
know,
do too, also like you can look good and not have a fucked up relationship with food. Like I do want to
Yes.
put a plug for that as
Mm-hmm.
well. Like you can look great and be really normal, and you
Mm-hmm.
can just work really hard, and you can also be genetically gifted, right? Like there's also that. I have friends that they don't relate to my eating disorder, right? They
Mm-hmm.
relate to wanting to look a certain way, but like they look pretty kick ass and they do just normal things, but they eat well and they train hard. And like that's where I am now. Like I can say honestly that I look really good, right? I don't look
Mm-hmm.
like her, but I look like me.
Yeah.
But I also eat like really regimented and really clean, and like I train my butt off. So like it's purposeful, intentional work.
Yeah.
So I do also want to like, you don't, again, the idea that like getting sober from food means you're fat or you're inactive, but
Mm.
it's just like the idea of this perfectionistic pursuit to what, right? Which again
Mm-hmm.
goes back to the intention. Like if I'm trying to just feel the best I can, great, have at it. If that's your sport of choice, have at it. But the perfectionistic ideas and just trying to fit into this box,
Mm.
I think is just what we're not open about.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. And I also like something else that you mentioned to me before. So it's on the back of your book. There's this quote, and I want you to speak about it. So this is what it says. So it says, "You may not have an eating disorder. You may not think you know someone with an eating disorder, but you certainly know people trying to be better." What does that quote mean to you?
Yeah, I think, like addiction aside, eating disorder aside, I think at the end of the day, when we go to bed at night with ourselves,
Mhm.
we want to have been our best.
Mm.
And that could mean you want to be a peer among peers, right? You want to be of service to your family. You want to be available as a friend. And so the more we stay closed and withdrawn and don't talk to one another, the less able we're going to be that version of ourselves. You
Mm.
know, um, I kind of grew up in a recovery environment where like it was us against them
Mm.
being the normies, right? And like the longer I'm doing this and the more I share openly, the more I just connect as a human to human. And I think
Mm.
we all have struggles with emotions. We all struggle with vulnerability, right? Which essentially binds us together. Like I see you, you see me. And so the more we just can talk about our stuff, we
Mm.
all uncover the fact that we all have stuff. Even if the
Mm.
stuff is like, I think I'm a piece of shit. Oh, you do too? That's funny, right? Like join the club, right? So like you may not have had any parental issues or family weirdness or child upbringing where there was trauma, or have an eating affliction or drug or alcohol addiction, but like you certainly have days where you're like, did I miss the handbook that everybody else got on life? Because I don't know what's going on. And, that's what I meant, like just being a better human, like
Mhm.
being nicer to the cashier, being quieter in traffic, holding the door, wearing your mask right now,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Mhm.
um, and
Yeah.
just trying to show up for somebody else.
Wow. I love that quote. I remember reading that. I'm like, I need to ask her about this because I want to see what she says about this and how you put that together, because I love that. It's so true. Just when you boil it down to whatever it is, whether you have struggled, whether you have not, with whatever it is that is the topic of discussion, at the end of the day, we all just want to be better in some kind of way, whether that is for ourselves. We want to be better for ourselves, whether we want to be better for our family, our friends, or whatever it is. We just want that. And I feel like what you said is, wanting that and realizing that, and being able to connect in some kind of a way, whether that is through our vulnerabilities, whether that is through another kind of thing. It is. That's what it is. So yeah, I love that quote. So, I mean, and I just wanted to thank you too. I mean, for making the time to come on and get into this topic, discuss this, and break down a little bit of your story for us on body image and eating disorders, and what that experience is, and what it looked like for you, and all of that, because it's valuable, and it's a topic that I've never talked about. And I'm glad that you are virtually here and we made this happen. So
Thank you.
Yes, of course. And I'm excited to put this episode out. And I just want to say again, thank you for coming on, Alison. And thank you guys for listening so much. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And I cannot wait for you to finish this episode. And you finished it since I'm about to end it. So, all right. Well, thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.